Father Mark Patrick has been a monk for more than 60 years in Glenstall Abbey. He is the archivist, which is must be such a wonderful job to have. And so I'm going to pass over to Father Mark Patrick. But before I do that, we're just going to say an opening prayer.
Thank you for inviting me, and it's a great pleasure and a horrific experience to be addressing this huge crowd in a way that I have never really done before. My subject is Benedict for basket cases. People might think that monastic life is for the few, the strong, the holy, but in fact, it was designed for the weak, the craven, the helpless. It is a plaster cast for the broken. Normal people don't need such drastic measures to pull themselves together. To achieve a workable relationship with God who created you, you don't have to live in a monastery. You don't have to undertake feats of asceticism, wear kinky clothes, or spend hours in prayer. You just have to follow a few simple rules which carry you every day in a relaxed and refreshing regime. Bless those wet behind the ears, for they shall tumble dry. We all know what we would like to be like. We make New Year resolutions on an annual basis. We have a goal in mind, and we make efforts to inspire ourselves by various methods of self-motivation. The spirituality and self-help sections of most bookshops are awash with handbooks to help us along and to produce the miracle. How to give up smoking, how to lose a stone in a fortnight. We sign up for weekend courses, for conferences online, and these guarantee to make us mystics within the month. But the simple truth seems to be this. It doesn't matter how many resolutions we make, courses we attend, personal trainers that we hire, we can't help ourselves unless we adopt a simple daily regime to counteract the gravitational pull that seems always to be yanking us downwards. Because it seems to me that the truth is that we are slobs, basically. We prefer to crawl along the ground rather than stand up and be counted. How can it be that 3 hours after making a decision to lose weight, I find myself sitting in my car outside a 7-Eleven superstore, laying into a pint-sized Chunky Monkey ice cream tub? There is a gap between what we want and what we are. And the Rule of Benedict, which the author calls a little rule for beginners, does not pretend to offer anything more than a school of the Lord's service, and it provides a style of life for those interested in living in relationship with God. And Benedict was a keen and compassionate observer of human nature and realized that people are weak, that people fail, and yet he believed that most of us are able to measure up to the challenge of divine relationship. So his is a no-nonsense, unembroidered regime. He refuses to lay down anything harsh or burdensome, just to impress the monastic Weight Watchers. If there is any strictness, he says, in his rule, it is to correct faults and to safeguard love. Benedict emphasizes the importance both of the human person and the relationship that exists between persons who are trying to live together. He has the natural psychologist's awareness of touch when he is arbitrating between conflicting interests in human affairs. His rule contains directions for all aspects of community life, but there is an inbuilt diffidence and a flexibility which allows for adaptation to different countries, different climates, different centuries. And this is why his formula has lasted for over 1600 years. His little rule carried, almost unconsciously, the wisdom of Christianity through the Dark Ages, when anything more specific or more prescriptive or more athletic might have perished. And the rule had a seminal influence on European history, providing a sane and simple infrastructure for community living, cooperative work, and communal prayer. The Rule of Benedict is as genial for what it leaves out as for what it puts in. It is neither devotional nor diffuse. It is food for the desert, pemmican rather than puff pastry. The lowest common denominator of monasticism, and at the same time, quintessentially distilled wisdom of the mystical East. Benedict combines the genius of Rome for legislation with the Christian flair for personal touch. His rule can be redesigned and tailored to the needs and requirements of any group of people seeking an orderly and reliable way of connecting with God in the turbulent world of our 21st century. So, a bit about himself. Benedict was someone who lived in the 6th century, and he left behind this handbook for organizations of monks and nuns all over the world. He wrote this rule after the fall of the Roman Empire, when the Western world was in collapse. And within a century of his death, which took place in the middle of the 6th century, his rule had spread to Italy, Gaul, Spain, and England. And by the 9th century, the Benedictine rule had more or less supplanted most other observances in Northern and Western Europe. So the Benedictines may be counted among the founders of medieval Europe. In many regions of that continent, they created or consolidated the first Christian communities. They directed the development of social organizations and exerted a powerful influence on emerging cultural and intellectual trends. They shaped the regional economy by providing the workforce and the infrastructure of what came to be Europe of the Middle Ages. Montalembert, the 19th century historian, suggests that the monks were the technical advisors to Europe after the invasion of the barbarians. Benedictine monasteries acted as agricultural colleges for the regions in which they were located. Through their efforts, modern-day Germany, for instance, was brought from wilderness, more or less, to prosperity. Monks stored water from springs and taught whole regions the methods in which they would irrigate their lands. They introduced crops, industries, production methods. In Sweden, for instance, the corn trade. In Parma, cheese making. All over Europe, they introduced vineyards. The night they invented champagne has been traced to Dom Pérignon, bursar of St. Peter's Abbey, Auvilliers-sur-Marne in 1688. And most of the renowned cuisine of La Bourgogne derives from menus which were devised at the Abbey of Cluny, a center of European culture and civilization for over 1,000 years, from the 10th century to the French Revolution. Now, nothing is known of Benedict apart from the life that was written about him a century later by the Pope of the time, Gregory the Great. Pope Paul VI made Benedict a patron of Europe in 1964, and Joseph Ratzinger took Benedict's name when he succeeded John Paul II as Pope. Jacques Delors, the advocate of post-European integration, post-war European integration, he was also the architect and the key player in the development of the European Union. He died at the age of 98 in December 2023, and he asked the Benedictine abbots of Europe to come together and to form a group which might inject some spirituality into the organization which had originally been founded on the coal and steel industries of France and Germany. So as Benedict and his monks had rescued Europe during the time of general collapse after the fall of the Roman Empire, so too, thought Jacques Delors, it might have some interesting advice for the European Union at this present time of political upheaval. Now, who am I to speak of such possibilities, living as I do in one of the most privileged and beautiful places in the world, enjoying all the benefits of a stable and wealthy society, surrounded by the luxuries, the comforts, and the blessings of a well-heeled first world community. I am embarrassed and ashamed to open my mouth when it comes to enumerating the benefits which accrue from being a Benedictine monk in the monastery of Glenstall Abbey in Ireland in the first half of the 21st century. Our life is as far from the barren desert of the ancient hermits of early monasticism as the Waldorf Astoria at Beverly Hills is from the least humble Hindu ashram. Glenstall Abbey was the first male Benedictine monastery in Ireland since the dissolution of the monasteries by Henry VIII in the first half of the 16th century. So does the setup here at Glenstal Abbey do justice to what Benedict had in mind when he wrote his rule? Well, here we live in an earthly paradise, which would be the envy of the wealthiest home buyers of the world. We rise at 6 a.m., as most other people do all over the world, and we do not pray in the middle of the night. Nor do we enter the church 7 times a day, as the rule specifies. We settle for 4 times a day. We eat the flesh of 4-footed animals, although the rule specifically forbids us to do so. We recite the 150 Psalms in the space of 2 weeks, although the rule insists that these should be recited in the space of 1 week, citing the example of our forebears in monasticism who would recite all 150 Psalms in the space of a single day. Are such details essential or expendable? There is no precast mold that can guarantee successful sculpture where human beings as works of art are concerned. Creative adaptation is itself an art form. The art of tailoring, or more precisely, changing structures imaginatively to resonate with particular biographies and local conditions, is a cornerstone for success in the field of transplantation. Global organizations must strike a careful balance between upholding their identity and adjusting to cultural, socio-economic climates where they happen to land. Monasticism is not a torture chamber, an ascetic competition, or a hymn display. It is, in the end, a love machine, where God and any other person are given space and time. It is not the architecture, the structure, the diet, or the timetable that matter. It is the ambiance, the atmosphere, and the spirit of the place. It is by their fruit that you will know them. The purpose of monastic life anywhere at any time is to set up a structure, provide a rhythm, and supply the wherewithal for human beings of whatever kind to live the divine life instituted by Jesus Christ, the resurrected life which the God-man made possible for our humanity. Now, this kind of hybrid lifestyle is not just for some far-off later time or for some other dimension. It is for here and now, wherever we happen to be situated on this planet. Resurrection has already happened. Our task is to be witnesses to this fact. If you want me to believe in your Redeemer, Nietzsche said, you would want to look that bit more redeemed yourselves. Resurrection is not some all-powerful divine act. It is the tangible effect of divine love meeting and uniting with human being. The way we are by human birth, clashes with the way we should be by resurrection. This is the cross of human existence. We somehow prefer to live like ants or bees with an inbuilt code of behavior, a blueprint for conducting our lives. Birth, marriage, death are a horizontal way. We prefer the well-worn treadmill to the possibilities of freedom which are on offer. We could be living creatively rather than groveling conventionally. We can remain prisoners to our DNA, as do animals, birds, and bees, or we can break out and take off in another direction. The mind of a newborn child, according to Freud, is completely id-ridden, a mass of instinctive drives and impulses which require immediate satisfaction, and is amoral, selfish, unable to take no for an answer. We are, he claims, at first, an alimentary canal with no stopper at either end. But it doesn't have to remain that way. The notion that we are born to be inescapably selfish, that our instincts and habits are too deeply ingrained to be eradicated, that we are biologically determined and victims of pre-coded systems which dictate our behavioral responses, is belied even by certain scientific research. What is called the constructionist view of evolution suggests that we are not only capable of changing ourselves and our environment, but we are biologically built to do so. Far from being predetermined either by our environment or our genes, we are provided with an adaptive plasticity which awaits our decisive action before it forms us into the eventual shape that we choose to become. We are not hardwired by our hormones to any form of behavior. We are, it is true, made of dust and earth, vessels of clay, pots thrown by an almighty potter, but so are the pyramids, the Grand Canyon, and the cathedral in Chartres. Earth and clay are not insults, they are possibilities. We are also born prematurely. Horses, cattle, and lambs, you see them at this time of the year, stand up and walk on perfectly formed limbs within minutes of their birth out in the fields. We are underdeveloped fetuses. The continuing development of ourselves as human beings had a great deal to do with our decision at some point on the evolutionary trajectory to stand up straight on our hind legs and walk tall. And this changed everything about us, not simply our posture. We became vertical, which required massive redistribution of body weight. And as a result, for the rest of our history as a species, our heads became too big. Our brains needed such extensive headroom that we now have to wait until we are outside the womb to allow such extensive accommodation to develop fully. Babies are born with a brain 1/4 of the size of what becomes the adult version. Our first step on the road to resurrection was to stop crawling along the ground and stand up on our own 2 feet. Once this happened, We changed our orientation and began to develop organs which could cope not only with the newer and higher aerial view, but also with the revolution in socialization which this massive shift of emphasis installed. We are no longer simply yours truly crawling indifferently in horizontal search for sustenance and survival. We have developed a further brain structure which made us humanitarian and altruistic at the same time as it doubled the size of our heads. So we need to develop a backbone if we are to live our lives in the rhythm of resurrection rather than as spineless crustaceans crawling horizontally along a trail strewn by others with bait. We are mobile beanstalks, tottering on tenterhooks. I have to learn to balance all 98 kilos of me on two little ball points, no wider than two beer mats. Now, it took some effort. Considering the consistency and the power of gravity, we must realize how much inner drive the child has to rise to a standing position in 1 year. I have to develop the muscles of my upper back and arms to lift my chest off the floor, which is called the aeroplane position, and which takes me all of 6 months to accomplish. We are upstanding skyscrapers called to calcify without ossifying the spinal column. And having taught ourselves to walk tall, we start preparing ourselves for takeoff. Evolution suggests, biology confirms, that we are the only species on our planet which can bend itself towards whatever it chooses to become. We are architects of our future selves. We can become whatever we choose to become. The Rule of Benedict was designed to help such awkward anchorites. Now, here is a summary taken directly from his rule of Benedict for basket cases. To you, my words are directed, whoever you are. First of all, pray that whatever you set out to do may be brought to completion by Christ the King whom you serve. Let him, wherever our nature is powerless, supervene with the help of his grace. In this school of the Lord's service, do not be dismayed or turn from the way of salvation, the entrance to which must needs be narrow. But as you progress, your hearts will become enlarged, and you will be filled with the unspeakable sweetness of love. Each morning on the way to the church, encourage one another, as the drowsy may want to go back to bed and sleep. Blessed are the drowsy, for they shall soon drop off. The one in charge should be always solicitous for wayfarers, because it is the weaklings who need the doctor and not the healthy. Comforters should be sent to console the distressed, lest they be overwhelmed by sadness. For the abbot is charged with the care of sickly souls rather than those who are hale and hearty. The role model here is the Good Shepherd, who placed the lost sheep on his shoulders to return it with compassion to the other 99. Holy Jacob's injunction is regulatory. If I should cause my flocks to be overdriven, they will all perish in one day. The abbot should be loved rather than feared, and chapter 34 of the rule is paramount. Distribution of what is necessary is made according to the need of each one, rather than on the basis of some kind of calculated fair deal. Personal infirmity trumps even-handed impartiality. Before all things, and above all things, care is to be taken of the sick, of the old, and of the very young. Discretion is the mother of virtues. Although we read that wine is not a drink for monks, because our contemporaries cannot be persuaded of this, and taking account of weakness and infirmity, let us agree to a certain amount per day, as long as it does not lead to overindulgence. Clothes should be provided to suit the nature of the place we find ourselves in. Cold regions require more, warm climates less. And all requirements should be tailored to human susceptibility rather than to equal portions for every member. There is no one-size-fits-all prescriptiveness. In other words, my dear friends, blessed all those who travel steerage, for they shall be bumped up. Amen.
Thank you so much, Father Mark Patrick. If I was to maybe summarize what you said in your most inspiring and wonderful talk, beautifully delivered, it would be we're all basket cases, but we have infinite possibilities that we may not all be aware of. So I thank you for that. It's so edifying and so helpful to us to build us all up as fellow travelers on the way to resurrection, to hear those words and to be encouraged that we do have those possibilities. And of course, how we can help each other to achieve that. I'm going to, on behalf of all of us, could you please show through the reactions, which will be a revelation to Father Mark Patrick to see love hearts and clapping hands, all
Okay.
going up, the
Oh,
same
wow.
from everybody. What a wonderful talk it's been. You have enlightened, inspired us. You've given us a vision about how we can be more than basket cases. And we are grateful to you. And we would like to end off with asking you, would you be happy, Father Mark Patrick, to end off by just giving us a blessing, and then we will go our way tonight.
An Irish blessing. May the road rise to meet you. May God come down to bless you. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.